I'm so glad to be here because when all else fails, work with another addict saves the day. So that's the real raw truth here. I'm Karen A from Jerusalem, and let's officially welcome everybody and kick off this meeting. It is being recorded. Hi, my name is Karen A from Jerusalem, and this is the Afro-Euro Reco12 meeting. Reco12 is a family of recovery resources for all those suffering from alcoholism or any addiction and affliction who have found recovery through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and other recovery literature. We have gamblers, we have compulsive overeaters, we have compulsive spenders, we have anorexics, bulimics, sexaholics, workaholics, hoarders, clutterers, Al-Anons, codependents, and surely many of those people have a lot of those. And if you have any others, feel free to add them to the list. We do feel that working the 12 steps of AA has brought relief in those dark, challenging moments that do come up, not if they come up, but when they come up. At any rate, you can check us out at Reco12.com. We've got recordings on all those addictions, all those afflictions, and surely there's someone there you would identify with who is telling your story, who their share says to you, wow, they read my mind. I am them. I get that. Normal people don't get me. So check out Reco12.com. A lot of shares there. If you'd like to share, please put your number in the chat. I will put my number in the chat. You can reach out to me directly or through the Reco12 website. If you have sponsees who are ready to share their experience, strength, and hope, let them know and let us know, because we want their story, their recovery, inspiration to go out online. This meeting is small and intimate live. We usually get anywhere between 10 and 20 people, but be assured that over 350 people listen to these recordings weekly, pretty much. So you make a difference, and this does make a difference. And thank you for all being here today in our beautiful meeting. Today, we have a speaker meeting. Our speaker, Anna, will be sharing on the topic of codependency for 30 minutes. And then we'll have a Q&A. You could either put your questions in the chat and then Anna could take them at the end, or we can unmute and go one by one. We've done both on this meeting. We're a little less formal about that. There are costs to cover the Zoom and the platform to maintain our Reco12.com recordings and resources. So your seventh tradition will be generously appreciated if you go to Reco12.com/support. And there you can contribute your seventh tradition by PayPal or Venmo. Without further ado, I'd like to have our guest introduce herself and share with us, take us through that topic that I, for darn well sure, need to hear this morning. Thank you. Welcome, Anna.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be here. I have heard about this podcast since I joined the 12 Steps, and it's pretty famous in Sweden, where I'm from. Yeah.
Great. Send us all your Swedish fellows.
Sorry, what was that?
I said, great. Send us all your Swedish fellows and sponsees and all that.
Yes, I have and will continue. We do listen a lot to Reco12 and share it in our Swedish fellowship as well. So really glad to be here. Yeah, codependency. I'll be sharing from my own experience, my recovery journey. I'll also be sharing from the big book, which is the way that I've found recovery. And I would love to hear, if you guys have any questions, and I'd love to hear your experiences too, if you do relate to codependency. I thought that we could start with, what is codependency? Because to me, it was pretty elusive at first. And what I've found it to be has come from my sponsors, mainly, and then through the big book, like I've said. But basically, my first sponsor told me when I was like, what is codependency, you know? Because at first we can think that codependency is, okay, I'm addicted to people. That's pretty much what I was thinking at first, because the typical thing that we have is problems in our relationships, not just romantic, but any type of relationships, you know, work, family, uh, you name it, right? And so at first I was like, am I addicted to people? But then my first sponsor, she told me that it's one of two things. Either we're addicted to validation or control. Typically, it's both, a combination of both. Uh, so, for example, when I say validation, you know, or affirmation, acknowledgement from other people, typically, uh, if you relate to this, maybe you find yourself saying yes to things that when you think about it, you're like, why did I say yes to that? Like, I don't even want to do that, or I don't like that. But why do I keep saying yes to these things? Uh, and that's often because we, you know, we are afraid of offending someone or disappointing other people. And so we say yes, even though it's not perhaps from God. It might be driven from fear and stuff like this. We might be so used to saying yes to things that it's not perhaps really fully in alignment. Maybe if you relate to being addicted to validation, like me, you identify as an overachiever. I burnt myself out because I was, you know, truly trying to do everything. I was studying and I was working full time and I was over exercising. I was trying to hang out with everyone and please everyone, you know. People pleasing is a very typical way that we act out as codependents. And a lot of us burn out because of that, like me. Um, yeah. So validation, I mean, validation, often we think that, oh, I just like want everyone to look at me and like be an influencer on Instagram or whatever. It's not usually, it can be that, but it's usually more, we don't want people to be disappointed in us. We want them to like us. We want them to think well about us. Um, One of the things that I really struggle with in my addiction as codependent is thinking that someone doesn't like me, thinking that someone is judging me. Um, and so I've spent so much time trying to control how people perceive me and, you know, making sure that I have to like check up on people. If did I say something, maybe she took offense to that. Oh my God, I have to, you know, all of these things. And I'm pretty grateful for the program because today I'm not spending so much energy worrying about things that I can't control, right? Which is basically what other people think about me. And let's talk a little bit about control. So I said that we are, as codependents, addicted to validation or control or both. It's usually a combination. So control can look like controlling external things, such as, you know, always having to have the perfect home, having to, you know, have it clean and neat and all of those things. And if it's not, we really struggle. Like, for example, inviting people to our home if we feel that it's dirty or stuff like that can be a real trigger for some codependents. Could also be that we hate surprises because we don't have any control when surprises happen. It could be very common for women, I will say, also men, but feeling like we have to have the perfect body, you know. Often I would say that if we have eating disorders. I've seen a clear pattern in my experience. I've had that. And it's a lot of control, right? Like you have to eat the right things or you have to exercise and blah, blah, blah. That's a lot of control. Yeah. And then maybe something everyone can relate to, who knows? But especially as a codependent, I can relate to overthinking and ruminating. That's really common. And that's a way that we control, or we think we can control the future by overthinking. Like, okay, I'm going to this job interview and what should I wear? I should wear that. I should say that, excessively trying to control the future, or ruminating about the past. Even though it's happened, we keep thinking about it because our sickness is making us think that we can somehow control it. Anyways, I don't know if you can relate to any of this. I would love to hear. If so, feel free to type in the chat. Or if this all sounds super alien, I'd love to hear that too. And I do want to talk a little bit about codependency as the mother addiction. Thank you so much. Haley says, yeah, I can definitely relate. And Fran too. Glad to hear that. I mean, I don't want you to suffer. But a lot of us do have codependency, which is why I want to talk about the mother addiction thing. And I don't know if you've heard this, but I heard this not too long ago, actually, that I think it was a partner friend of mine who said that codependency is the mother addiction. And I don't mean to, diminish any other addiction. They're obviously all equal, but I found it really interesting. Hi, by the way. Hi, Marva. Hi, Amy. Hi, Leah. So codependency as the mother addiction, what does that mean? A trend that I've seen during my years here recovering from codependency has been that a lot of my partner friends have started maybe the 12 steps in AA or NA or
What?
SLA or something like that. And then I've actually seen this with a lot of people that they've started, for example, in AA, and then they've, become sober there. And then they've worked their way to and realized, hey, I'm actually a love addict too, or sex or love addict. And so they've joined SLA, and then they've become sober there. And then once they've done that, they've realized, you know what, I'm actually codependent. Like this is where it comes. And then they come to that. And yeah, it's a really interesting thing, because I think if you look at the big book, which I use, there is some text there that to me speaks that maybe codependency is, at the root of a lot of our addictions. I might be totally wrong here. I'm not saying that I have the truth or anything, but I do want to share the part in the big book that I'm thinking of. So this is at page 98. And here, this is the 12th step chapter, working with others. And it says, we simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence upon God. And to me, when I read that the first time, I was like, isn't that a little weird to write in a book for alcoholics? They're addicted to alcohol. Shouldn't it say that we won't recover as long as we place dependence upon alcohol instead of God? But no, the book says that even alcoholics won't recover as long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence upon God. So to me, this really speaks to me as a codependent. But I also think that a lot of us um, might have some codependency underneath. And again, I can be totally wrong and off the rails here. I don't have any monopoly on the truth, but I did want to speak today because I think that codependency is something that I've felt myself, of course, and a lot of people have really found an amazing recovery in their recovery journey when they've looked at that. And I think that one of the reasons for that is because codependency is pretty elusive. You know, we don't have a substance. We don't even have, like sex addicts, it's like an act, right? That's pretty easy to spot. So for us, it's really subtle, and we have to really dig and go inwards and look at things like, our character defects, basically, and how they show up. And yeah, I've had a lot of people tell me that this has really been helpful for their recovery journey, also for other addictions. So, anyways, and I have the utmost respect for all addictions, and there is obviously no hierarchy or anything. I only want everyone to not have to suffer. Another interesting thing on this note from the big book is that on page 103, it says that bottles were only a symbol. So to me, that also speaks to the fact that, okay, maybe it's not the alcohol that's the real root issue here. And the book says that on, I forget what page it is, but like alcohol was just a symbol or something like that, almost the same sentence. So anyways, that's a little bit about what is codependency. And maybe you already identify as codependent. Maybe you've worked the steps, you're sponsoring, and you're doing amazing. If you're new to this, how about we just chat a little bit about how can we identify as a codependent? Like, how do I know, am I codependent or not? I will say it, I don't think there's a black and white here. I've had this conversation with sponsees, like, am I codependent? Like, am I a hopeless codependent? Or am I just like a big drinker, a high consumer? And to me, for codependency, I found that this doesn't really matter. I leave that to God, to judge and decide. The only thing I care about is, I often ask people when they come and want to do the steps, can you stop?
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Reco12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform.
Can you stop seeking validation? Can you stop controlling things? That's a first simple thing to ask yourself, right? Like, if I'm, for example, seeking validation by always saying yes to things that I don't want, can you stop? Like, let's say that someone asks you to, I don't know, help them move, and you don't really have time because you're a mom and you have kids and you're super tired and whatnot. Can you actually say no? If you can, great, but maybe you really struggle to say no. And if you do manage to say no, then another telltale sign is when you say no, you're bombarded with rumination and, the negative thoughts and like, oh my God, she or she's going to hate me and they're not going to help me when I need it. And, like this, right? I hear you, Haley. Haley saying, yeah, I feel guilty saying no even if I do say no. I feel you on that. Like this, oh my God, I have spent so many hours just feeling bad when I actually had the courage to say no. So this can be one of those things. Or uh, another way that we might control is other people, like controlling our partners. Like, does your partner always walk in the house with dirty shoes? And are you always there to, comment or stuff like that? This is something I've had to really, really work on. I have a lot of those control tendencies with like, oh no, you shouldn't put the milk there. It should be there in the refrigerator or whatever. And that's really just my control sickness, right? It's pretty hilarious when you start looking at it. So that's the first question I would ask. Like, can you stop? Or if you can't stop, do you get flooded by bad conscience or you feel guilty and stuff like this if you say no, for example? That could be a sign. Because I would say people who don't have codependency, they just, it's not a thing for them. They can say no, like, oh, I'm sorry, Kate, I can't help you move this weekend. Good luck, and it's not a big deal. But for us, it's like, I have to say yes. Or if I don't, oh my God, I feel so bad. I have to give her a gift, or I have to do something else for her so she's not mad or upset or disappointed. Another really simple question that I often ask is, okay, are your relationships causing you pain? And this can be any relationships. Like, it could be obviously with your partner, could be with your parents, could be with your kids, with your boss or coworkers, could even be, in the fellowship. Um, Oftentimes, codependency shows itself the clearest where we feel like there's just kind of drama, or problems or pain in our relationships. And it's involuntary pain, it's not like we are looking for drama. But it's just like, oh my God, can this just please stop? I just want peace and no drama. That's how I felt. I felt like wherever I turned, it was just like drama and pain. And I really didn't want to. I tried to please everyone. I tried to be super nice and good. And like, I really did my best. And still, I was stuck ruminating and like overthinking, like, why did she or he do that? What did they, what, like, I felt a lot of resentment. I felt a lot of fear. Um, And sometimes I expressed it, but a lot of times it was just deep inside of me and I didn't know what to do with it. I was like, just please, how do I get free of this? Um, and that's the third thing I want to say that you can actually discover if you might have codependency. Do you often feel a lot of fear or resentment around your relationships? This one is a little bit harder to notice because typically we're not really aware, in my experience at least, we're not aware. I wasn't super aware that I was walking around super scared to make people upset or scared of people thinking poorly of me and stuff like that. But it's like this anxiety or tightness, in our body, like worrying a lot. Resentment might be a little easier to spot if you find yourself often being like, oh my God, this person, like, oh, why did she do that? That is so rude. Or like, why didn't she ask me? Why didn't he do that? Or like, just feeling a lot of resentment or bitterness. Those can be telltale signs because I do find that a lot of us with codependency struggle with this. We don't want to feel resentful. We don't want to feel scared. But we do, because this is our sickness. And until we treat it, with the 12 steps, we tend to have these things. Hi, Chris. Hi, Leah. Hi, everyone. So glad to see you all here. I would love to hear, your experience of codependency, and if you can relate to stuff that I'm saying, or if it sounds totally bonkers as well. And the last thing that you can use to see if you might be codependent is gossip. Or let's say it doesn't have to be gossip. Like, gossip can feel like, oh, you're really trash talking someone behind their back. But do you find yourself often talking about people behind their back? And it can be both positive or negative. In my experience, codependents are some of the nicest people. But this tendency is a way that we often act out, because we're scared of people thinking bad about us, or we're scared of upsetting people. And therefore we tend to vent our frustration or our fear without talking to the person directly, because if we would confront them or share how we feel, they might not like us, or these things. So do you find that you often talk about people behind their back? And maybe it doesn't have to be anything bad. It could be just like, oh, well, she, just sharing information and stuff. Could be a sign in my experience.
Hey, Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Reco12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Reco12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform.
All right, so let's talk a bit about what's helped my recovery. It's pretty much the same as you guys, I think, with your recovery journeys. If not, I would love to hear. So obviously, God has been my savior. I believed in God before I joined the 12 steps, but what I found, thanks to the program and my sponsors, was that I had not really done everything I needed, like especially step 3. I had not surrendered control of everything to God. Instead, I'd kind of invited God as a little helper sometimes, but I still held, the reins, and I thought I knew best, and that I was the one who was supposed to control the show as the actor. So God has definitely, He's my savior, obviously, or my higher power. I also want to thank my sponsors, naturally. I am such a huge fan of sponsorship. I'm such a huge fan of one-on-one sponsorship. I don't know your guys' experience, but from a codependency point of view, I do see a lot of, and I'll share that in a bit. There are many ways that lead to Rome, many ways that lead to recovery, and my way is not the right one for everyone. But if you're listening to this and you have perhaps tried a PO5 group, Power of 5 group for codependency, and you feel like it's helped, but it's not really, done everything you'd hoped, I really encourage everyone to try one-on-one sponsorship. And I also recommend to, if the first sponsor doesn't feel super aligned, like, keep trying, because we have to find the right people for us at this point also in our recovery. And why I'm mentioning sponsorship is for two reasons. One, because it will help you recover when you start doing the steps, obviously. But number two is because I would say that codependency heals the most through sponsorship, because that's where our whole sickness gets to really unfold, because it's a close, intimate relationship. I'm seeing Fran laughing. Yeah, it's a close, intimate relationship. We have to really share vulnerably. There's a big chance that we are going to act out both as sponsees, but also as sponsors, with trying to please, trying to all of these things. It really comes forward in sponsorship. So I am a huge fan of one-on-one sponsorship. If you haven't tried it. Obviously, I've mentioned the AA Big Book. It's been the path that I've been shown to recovery. And as I've mentioned, I think it's really magical when you start reading that book with the lenses of codependency. If you translate alcohol for validation seeking or control. And that's also another reason why I would really recommend one-on-one sponsorship, because a lot of us do struggle with the Big Book. I mean, it was written in the 1930s by white heterosexual males in the US. So there can be a lot of barriers to the text, especially if, for example, you don't really identify with that demographic and obviously the historical factor as well. So a lot of the work that I do as a sponsor is to help translate the Big Book into the individual situation of my sponsees. And that's what my sponsors did for me too. We have to kind of be able to understand, well, if my biggest pain point is my relationship with my mom, okay, then we have to adapt it to that. Or if it's more, I'm super codependent with my boss or coworkers, whatever it is, right? So yeah. And then obviously the whole program. I mean, living in step 10, 11, and 12 has really been huge for me. I don't think this is unique for me, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. But again, step 12, sponsorship, very important. I do want to mention that I do see a little bit of a tendency among codependents to perhaps wait with sponsorship a little bit too long. And I think this ties into the fact that we tend to be perfectionists. We tend to overthink, and we tend to think that we are not enough. That's kind of part of our sickness. And so a lot of us codependents are wary to start sponsoring because we think, I can't sponsor someone. I don't know enough. I don't have enough experience. Like, I still feel crazy, or I still have challenges and drama in my relationship. How can I help anyone? But remember what the Big Book says on step 12 in the working with others chapter. It says that you can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. So, and this speaks to us directly, whatever point we're at. I had a conversation not too long ago about, doesn't matter how long you've been in recovery. Doesn't matter if you just finished step 12 and you're a new sponsor. You can't say, because I do see some people like asking, I want a sponsor who's been in recovery for 10 plus years. And maybe that's God's will for you, then go ahead. But I do want to say this. The amount of help you can get from a sponsor isn't necessarily connected to how long they've been in recovery. I would more focus on, what is God telling me about this person? Does this feel like an aligned fit for right now? So to anyone who's a new sponsor, you go, you got this. And you can help when no one else can. Just find the right sponsee. Fran is saying, I really like the chapter to wives in the big book. It's been quite enlightening to me to read it through the lens of codependency. Ooh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Fran, because that chapter is pretty much like describing codependency, right? So that's super cool. I'd love to hear your experience also if you want to share more in a bit. Okay, yeah, and I'm also going to mention program friends. If you're new to the 12 steps, maybe you're working through the steps right now or you haven't started. Or you've just finished the 12 steps and you're maybe starting sponsoring and stuff. The book says to us, like, there's nothing like watching, making friends in a program and watching a community grow up around us. So I really recommend, especially when you start sponsoring, I recommend that you start building connections with people and having program friends that you can share your step 10 inventories with and just your journey. That's been a huge help for me. My sponsor is invaluable, but so are my program friends. We need both. So yeah, because this is a tough journey. The recovery journey is not for everyone, guys. So you being here, it's a tough road, and we need each other. And the last thing I'm going to say before I'd love to just invite you all to share your experiences at Journey, and if you have any questions, is if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, maybe I am codependent. I want to talk to a sponsor. I want to maybe start going through the steps for codependency. Where do I turn? Which fellowship? I do want to say this because, yeah, I found some maybe not clarity, a lot of confusion around this. So there are actually quite a few fellowships that can help you with codependency. And the one that I hear about the most that I joined first was CODA, Codependents Anonymous. And that's one way. They typically have the Power of Five groups that I mentioned, where you can work through the steps without a sponsor and just with a group of other sponsees together going through the steps. So that's one way. They also do have one-on-one sponsorship, and they're actively looking for more sponsors to come out and share availability. So that's one way. Another fellowship is Al-Anon, and I will admit I haven't been to Al-Anon or any other fellowship, but they were probably the original, I think. They started next after AA, I believe, probably based on the chapter that Fran mentioned, Two Wives. So that's another fellowship that you can get sponsorship and support for codependency. A third one is ACA, Adult Children. That's it also deals with codependency basically. And a fourth one that is a little newer is Recovered Codependents, and they use the AA Big Book for codependency. So that's another one. And I believe that Spiritual Gangsters as well help with codependency. If I've understood it correctly, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but they help with all addictions through the Big Book. So that's one way as well. And I myself have kind of joined the Swedish group, which is called Live and Let Live, who also have a meeting. Fortunately, it's in Swedish. So if you don't know Swedish, it might not be super helpful. But we do work with the Big Book as well. And we have Chris here, I believe, and Marwa and some others who maybe have been a part of also starting a new meeting, which is joint between SLA and codependency. So we have a joint dual focus, because I will say that it's very, very common. If you have codependency, it's very common to have love addiction or sex addiction too. And if you have love addiction or sex addiction, it's very common that you have codependency too. So you're very welcome to our meetings on Fridays at 6 p.m. UK time as well, where we study the big book and deal with people addictions, so both codependency and love and sex addiction. All right, I'm going to stop talking now, and thank you guys so much. I would love to hear your experience, those of you who are present. Do you relate to codependency? Or like any questions you might have? Yeah, the floor is yours.
Yeah,
Karen says she relates. Oh, hi, Fran.
yeah. Hi, Anna. Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing. Yeah, I can relate. I can just relate to both the aspect of seeking validation and also, yeah, seeking control. And yeah, it's that illusion that I can wrest satisfaction by managing well, right? Isn't it? It's like, as the big book talks about it, somewhere around step 3. Well, if I just get everything in the right place, in the right order, at the right time, then I'm going to be happy. And then the show will turn out perfectly and everyone will be pleased, including myself. So it's this great delusion that, oh, things are not going the way they should. And that's where I get resentful. That's where I get afraid. So what I'm learning in program is, just to surrender all that and see, actually, the things are going in a way, right? They're going the way they're supposed to go, and I'm just learning to let go and to let God, to just surrender, especially the beliefs or the false beliefs surrounding what is happening, my judgment, and then to ask God for guidance, yeah, and also just realizing that. Which is easier said than done, but just realizing that my primary source is my higher power, is God, and it's not other people. Because with other people, it can never be enough. That's the great delusion, because it's like maybe one day they smile and then the other day they don't, and then I might think, why are they not smiling? Did I say something wrong? And it's just the insanity of that. So it's actually been really freeing for me. I have not gone through the steps in codependency. I've gone through the steps in, sex addiction and sex and love addiction. But still, I could just sense something lifting. Very powerful, very, very grateful to the steps. Yeah. Thanks for letting me share.
Here we go. Thank you so much, Fran, for sharing. I relate so much. And I love how you said it's like we're chasing that validation and other people liking us, but then they might like us or give us super positive validation one day, and then the next totally different. And then our whole world falls apart. And I relate to that so much. So thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. I'm going to invite Karen back.
Yeah. Something in the chat. See that? From Jessica from the essay in Codependency. I'm going to recommend and put your number in the chat as well. Can you hear me? Oh no. Is this any better? Hold on. Is this any better? I moved somewhere else. Can I be? Oh, great. Okay. In my clothing closet, I have reception. It's so weird. It's by a window. Jessica, go ahead and put your number in the chat. I'll put my number in. We can refer you to some groups. Certainly, there are a number of online meetings. And definitely check out the Reco12 website. But reach out to us and put your number in the chat as well if you're still on. Can't even see it. I think you are gone. Oh, well, okay. So much for that. I have a question. Why don't you do some service here live and direct? I've been around the rooms for 11 years, working on codependency and love and validation addiction for the past 5-6 years. And what do you do when things get out of hand? Or more specifically, how can I help myself, live and direct now? I got upset at my teenagers last night. I went away for the day. I had a beautiful day. And it's like right away, I ruined everything. I came back in a nice mood, a good mood, even though I came back to a really messy house and a ton of laundry. They had actually folded and put away a lot of laundry, but there was still a whole lot left. And there were dishes in the sink and it was a mess. And I just got home and they went out to eat. So two things happened. And I still related to what you said about control and fear. It's one, I wanted them to clean the house and be helpful and see how my trip was and talk to me and give me attention. And two, I was really, angry that, the control, you should be cleaning this, you should be this, you should be talking to me, you should be sharing. And it was I was like, how did that happen? I just spent the whole day at the beach. I had such a nice time with one of my other kids, my son, even though he was really annoying at times. I was so recovered and kept it together, and I prayed, and I just had a nice time. And I had a good and great interaction with another one of my daughters. And the minute I got into fear about them not helping me, not doing, not this, it just went haywire. What do you do to get back on track? What do you do when you feel hungover the next day, which is how I feel right now? I feel like it's awful. Those are my questions.
Hey, Reco12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word-of-mouth support, keeps Reco12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at reco12.com/support or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Reco12 Spearhead.
Sorry, my computer is a bit slow. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Karen. That's such a good question. I'm glad you mentioned that with how do we deal with it when we feel hungover the day after? And that's actually a really good thing to keep in mind. Also, emotional drunkenness. We don't drink alcohol as codependents, but we get emotionally drunk, and that's something I relate to a lot. I think just turning to God. I know that sounds simple, but oftentimes I find, at least, I don't know if this feels helpful or you relate, but I find that when I'm emotionally drunk, or I've been emotionally drunk and I feel hungover, it's usually because I think Fran mentioned this, I have an idea of how something should be, and then it doesn't match, reality doesn't match my idea of how things should be. And what I try to do then is just okay, God, your will be done, not mine. And try to remind myself that, okay, I just dropped a package of milk, yogurt on the floor, and my whole floor is covered with yogurt. That was not according to my plan, but apparently it's according to God's plan. So I talk often about like God's reality and accepting God's reality. And this is my biggest struggle. I have to work on this every day. Accept God's reality, Anna. Don't, because my sickness will try to come in and have its own agenda and think it should be like this, but it's like that. And that's really what causes the problems for me. For me, in that comes a lot of compassion and love, because often I blame myself when something hasn't happened according to my plan. And so God always reminds me that it's okay, Anna. It's okay. This happened. Fine. I love you still. You're still good enough for me, Okay, this person might be super pissed with you for whatever reason or whatever, but I love you and it's fine. So I don't know if that's helpful, Karen. That's just what came through.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question. You mentioned something else that I really related to. Was that like when you think someone's mad at you or when you messed up, like the codependent, and you will like right away try and like make it better, which is like more drunkenness, right? Like, I fought with my daughter. I mean, she actually like more told me off and was being really prickly. Teens can do sometimes. And I expressed that I was upset with her. I actually didn't yell. I went to my room. I paused. I was upset, but I wasn't totally out of control. And when she came to me later saying, "Hey, do you want to talk?" I said, "You know what? I think it's better. I just say pause. Like our big book says." But it's like I was like, she had no clothes. I should take her shopping, and I'm like that. It occurred to me that was also kind of crazy. Like, I mean, she does need clothes, and I do want to take her shopping and this, but like that, like she yelled at me. I felt bad. I told her it wasn't okay, and so I took myself apart and I went to my room. And then now I'm trying to like race after to like, because I feel like so hideous, so hungover as we called it, that I don't, it's like I'm And then I was like, after I offered her to go shopping, I mean, she's a teenager, she just wants to sleep in, but I was like, that's really sick too. How do you get out of that loop? I don't know if any of that is relatable.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I don't have kids, so I'm no expert, obviously, here. But I've been a teenager myself. So. I think I'm really impressed, with obviously you're deep in your recovery journey. So the fact that you paused, I think, is the biggest thing here. That's the hardest to learn and do, because the book says, step 11, like when in doubt, pause and turn to God. So it sounds like that's what you did, and ask God for guidance. So I do, in these situations, I try to wrangle myself away from the situation like you did, and then do a step 10 inventory, like pray to God, and then see what comes through from God, because the answer for me is pretty much always God. Like, what is he saying? And sometimes I'm too emotionally drunk to actually feel or hear his guidance in the moment. And that's when I call out to my sponsor or program friend to just cool down. But I don't know if I'm understanding the situation correctly, but I think, being honest, like I don't like I don't think that this is a good idea, or, with kids, we have to have boundaries, and that's okay. And I think what's coming through for me is a kid, when we set a boundary, they might be really upset, They are probably our hardest critics often. And so if God is telling you that, no, it's not a good idea for her to go shopping or whatever it is, if you say that, you set a boundary, she might have a tantrum And I think something that I'm really working on that God has told me is it's okay. In step 9, I believe the book says it's okay if someone throws you out of their office. And I think that applies here too, that sometimes, our fears are valid with codependency, that if I say no to this person, they might be really upset. And it's really uncomfortable for us when someone gets upset with us, like our kids or so, definitely. So I think if God is telling you that no, she should not go shopping today or right now, then say that and just like stand there with God when she's showering you in.
It actually wasn't a boundary. Sorry, it wasn't a boundary. I'm saying it was my craziness that like she was nasty. It kind of escalated. So like in the chapter of, to the wives and the family afterwards, I just said like, no, I do not have the dubious luxury of getting into fights, and I was never get angry. Okay, I got angry, but I went in my room. And this morning when she was sleeping, I said to her, hey, do you want to wake up and go shopping? It wasn't a boundary. It was like you know what I'm saying? It was my people pleasing of like, I'll just offer that. I'll just try and make it better. So
Okay. So you suggested shopping as a kind of people pleasing. Okay, gotcha. I think
yeah, I mean,
honestly,
she's sound asleep anyway. She's sound asleep anyway, but I was like what? How do I stop this?
yeah. Well, I think, just be with the discomfort, right? The fear or whatever that makes you want to please her, right? So just rest with that. Like for me, it sometimes feel like I'm burning on the inside, like, oh my God, I need to do something. And that's when we act out and people please. So I've found the most help when I just be with that discomfort. Pause again. Did you try that?
Yeah, I'll take that on.
But of course, I don't have all the details, so I can't know.
Yeah,
But
it's all
for
good.
me, that
It's all
helps.
good. Yeah, we could see if we have another question. Thank you. I'm just going to be with it. Just being here and hearing this is just good.
I'm glad.
Does anyone else have any other questions here?
Just quickly, thank you so much, everyone. I just wanted to know a little bit about how the process of how all that changed. Like, of course, you did the steps, but I'm saying the process of not needing to please people, the process of not having drama in relationships, like all the codependency symptoms. Just how are they now, and how do they change? I understand you're relying on a higher power and turning to a higher power, and like that. Just a little bit more specifically or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Brindy. How did it change? This is such a good question. I think for me it was gradual, and I love you bring this up because when I first went through the steps, I was kind of expecting or at least hoping for like a lightning bolt from God to just fix everything immediately. And for me, it didn't happen that way. For some, it does, but in my experience, this has been a gradual process. And it's really been like step 10s. Like I've done so many step 10s and I do them still. It's ridiculous. That's been my lifeline. Because what's changed is really that I think in the beginning, I still get triggered. I still have my first drinks. But the difference is that before I would just focus outwards, you know? Like, oh, that person said this, or their tone of voice felt aggressive or disappointed or whatever. And I would obsess about that and just like be focused on that person externally. And the difference today is that I pause, or I try to when I am in good spiritual fitness. And I pause and I turn inwards and I just immediately surrender the fear or the resentment or selfishness, dishonesty, character defects. I just pray to God immediately. I turn to God first, which I know you also mentioned, Brandy. when we talked earlier. But that's really the biggest difference, because then it's like, you know, I can be free of the character defects, which make me crazy, right? The character defects are what drives me crazy and makes me act out, because I'm driven by fear, or I'm driven by resentment, or whatever it is. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's really the biggest difference for me.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And just have you pray us out here. If anyone, I have to go. If anyone would like to stay on the line and continue to ask you questions, are more than welcome to. But given we're at the hour, I'm going to ask you to close us out with a prayer. And thank you so much for sharing on this topic of codependency, experience, strength, and hope. Thanks for hearing my real life situation. I don't usually do that, but thanks for doing that. I hope it was helpful to someone on this call or someone out there. And yes, this is great. Go ahead, Anna.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you to everyone here live and for everyone listening. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen.